Hi everybody, my name's Andrew and today I'm driving a 2022 Toyota Tundra, specifically a 1794 edition. Today I'm going to give you guys a quick walk around of it, tell you a few things I like and dislike about it, and also take it for a test drive and tell you what I think. So let's jump right in. The Tundra was completely redesigned for the 2022 model year, and the 1794 edition does get some styling differences from the other trim levels. Most notably the front end and the amount of chrome that it features. Although, to be honest, I don't hate the chrome. Some people do, and some people also say that this is way too much grille. But that's kind of a trend nowadays. There's a lot of grille on every new car. Also, these are basically the same wheels as the Platinum trim, although a slightly different color. And overall, I think this is a phenomenal looking truck, regardless of what trim level you get. All trims come standard with LED head and taillights, although the upper trims get these upgraded adaptive units, which do feature sort of sequential turn signals. And around back, there's a few neat details that I really like. For one thing, they've integrated a tailgate button into the side of the taillight there, which is particularly useful if you're carrying things and you want to just kind of bump up against it to open it. Also, you may have noticed that the bed step automatically deployed when I opened the tailgate. Unfortunately, you can't use this button to put the tailgate back up, but it's still a nice thing to have. And yes, of course, it does have sequential turn signals. Inside the bed, you get LED lights on both sides, tie-down points on all four corners, as well as a household-style 120 outlet. And since the Tundra, like the Tacoma, has a composite bed, you effectively get a bed liner built in, which will save you the cost of having to put one in yourself. This is what the key looks like. Interestingly, no silver trim on the key like on the Avalon. Of course, it does have full keyless entry, and you'll notice power folding mirrors, as well as automatic power running boards. Both pretty standard features nowadays, but nice to have. The interior of this truck is a massive step up from the old generation Tundra. And particularly, I like the 1794 because it is the only trim level where you can get this sort of cognac tan interior color, which I am a big sucker for at the moment. The seats in this thing are just absolutely gorgeous too. And like I said, it's a massive step up from the old generation Tundra. So let's hop in there and talk about some of the new features. I'll start with where I'm sitting, the seats. Obviously they look phenomenal, but they also are very comfortable. They don't have quite as much tilt adjustment as I would like personally, but they do have an extending thigh cushion, which makes up for that. And of course they are heated and ventilated, which is phenomenal. Looking around the interior of the 1794, you'll find lots of satin finish wood trim, stitching, and surprisingly not a ton of 1794 edition details. That's actually the only place where it says 1794 in here. I have to say, overall material choices are excellent, don't get me wrong, but this shifter is very plasticky and not very substantial feeling. On the other hand though, this steering wheel is phenomenal. You'll notice it's got some perforation around the edge, silver trim and stitching down there on the bottom. It just feels excellent. Overall, they've really nailed all the touch points in here, which is what matters. And between this and the Ram 1500 Longhorn, this is probably the interior I'm going to pick just because I know that everything in here is going to last a lot longer than the Ram. I'm comparing this to the Ram 1500 Longhorn because, in my opinion, this and the Ram are currently the best interiors in this segment. One thing the Ram does not have is a fully digital gauge cluster on any trim level, actually. Even the top-end Limited and even the TRX doesn't get this. I will say, as fully digital gauge clusters go, this one is not super customizable. The reason I like the one in my Audi, for instance, is that you can have your map view in there and you can change the layout of it. This one doesn't really do much other than just change the style. You know, when you put it in a different drive mode, say for instance, I'm gonna go put it in Sport S Plus there. It takes a second for it to adjust. You'll see that the styling of the gauges changes slightly, and obviously you can change what's on the left. Like in pretty much every other Toyota product, you can scroll through this little screen right here. But overall though, it is a nice thing to have, and you know, keeps it up with the times in terms of technology, that's for sure. Of course, I also really like the giant center infotainment screen. This is by far the largest implementation of Apple CarPlay I've ever seen, because even in the Ford F-150, which has a similar size screen, CarPlay only takes up about that much of the screen. So this one's really nice for that reason. Of course, it's also wireless CarPlay, and if you don't want to use Apple CarPlay, you can still use the Toyota built-in infotainment system, which is pretty good. One thing I did notice is that in order to use the factory navigation, you have to pay for a subscription, which I'm not a big fan of. Also, there's no home screen here in this factory system, so you can only look at one thing at a time. If you want to have your music on, sure, but then you can't also look at your maps, which personally is a big reason why I use CarPlay in the first place. The last thing I want to talk about technology-wise is the camera systems in here. Of course, you have a digital camera rear view mirror that a lot of new cars are starting to have, but it is a feature that I really like. And of course, the 360-degree surround view system, which is probably the best use of this giant center screen. This camera system is one of my favorites. It's got all the angles you'd expect, it's pretty clear, and it has the sort of 3D spinning camera view that some of the BMW and Audi cars are starting to have. Hopping in the back seat of the Tundra, I've put the driver's seat in my position, and you can see how much space I still have. Weirdly, the 2022 Tundra is slightly smaller in terms of rear legroom than the 2021. At 41.6 inches, it's also one of the smaller ones in the segment, but obviously in this Crew Max configuration, there is still a ton of space. I'm certainly not complaining. Also, the back seats are heated and ventilated just like the front seats, and they fold up to reveal a large amount of hidden storage. All right, taking the 2022 Tundra 1794 for a little test drive here. The first thing I have to talk about, of course, is ride quality, because I harped on and on about my Ram 1500 being the best riding truck, etc., etc., etc. Now, this is actually my second time driving the new generation Tundra. I've also driven an SR5 in addition to this 1794, which does have a different suspension setup. And having driven both of those, they do ride incredibly nicely. But in my opinion, the Ram 1500 still rides just a tiny little bit better. Now, that said, this is 10,000 times better than the old Tundra, because I also have a lot of experience with the old Tundra. I know two people that own one, and I've spent plenty of time in them. So this versus the Ram, yeah, it's so close. I'm gonna say this is second place, but it's really, really close. This versus the old Tundra, though, night and day difference. The other big thing to talk about versus the old Tundra, of course, is that the V8 is gone. This is the first time the Tundra has ever used a V6, and it's actually a really good V6. Technically, it's a 3.4 liter. Everybody pretty much says 3.5, but technically it is a 3.4. This is not the iForce Max hybrid version. This is just the regular twin turbo that I'm in right now. But as far as V6s go, I don't hate this one. If I were going to be buying a truck in this segment, which I have actually, because I used to own a Ram 1500, I would want a V8. But this versus the V6 in the F-150, I prefer this. Also, this versus the 10-speed in the F-150, this is a million times better as well. The 10-speed in the F-150 is not the worst. Personally, I'm just not a big fan of 10-speeds in general, but having worked at a Ford dealership and now at another dealership where I'm around F-150s a lot from both a driving and reliability point of view, this should beat the F-150's 10-speed in both of those categories. While we're on the subject of the F-150, the Tundra and the F-150 are currently the only full-size trucks to offer a full hybrid version, the iForce Max and the Power Boost. Why we can't just call them hybrid, I don't know. But I haven't driven the hybrid version of this, but I have driven the Power Boost. And obviously they both make massive torque figures. The F-150 is really quick. I'm sure the Tundra hybrid will be really quick as well. So I can't really comment on anything else there. But if you're interested in the hybrid version in the first place, you probably care about fuel economy, which is where it's a little bit more interesting. because the Power Boost does offer a pretty significant fuel economy bump over the regular EcoBoost, whereas the hybrid version of this does not. I don't know if Toyota's just set it up more for purely better power and torque for towing and things like that, but either way, when I saw the fuel economy numbers for the iForce Max, I was a little bit disappointed. That said though, obviously since it's a V6, it will still get way better fuel economy than any of the V8 options in this segment. So it's not completely a lost cause. And finally, we need to talk about value, because this truck brand new was $65,000, and with the way the used car market is still, it's worth about $70,000 right now. So it's all well and good having the best interior or the second best ride and best reliability, etc. But is this truck worth $70,000? And how does it compare to the Ram Longhorn and the King Ranch F-150 at that price point? Well, the answer is yes, it is absolutely worth $70,000. I don't have any doubts about that. And price-wise, it's pretty similar to the competition as well. So for what you get, I think it is a better option at that price point. So to wrap this video up, is this my favorite full-size truck at the moment? Yes, it absolutely is. And I would buy it over the Ram 1500 if I were shopping new or nearly new. The reason I chose the Ram in my case was because mine was a 2019, and so it was a little bit cheaper. Once we get to that same point though with this generation Tundra, obviously my answer would still hold true. I would pick this. And is it the best truck overall in this segment? Yes, I think it is. I've driven the SR5, and everything pretty much that I like about this truck holds true about the SR5. The seats are the same, they're still comfortable, it still rides really nice even with the base suspension setup. The technology is still phenomenal, although you may not get all the same features. And of course, drivetrain and reliability will be the same either way. Before I end the video, I have to give a quick shout out to Echo Park here in Cary for allowing me to drive this Tundra today. I also do work here, so they are technically paying me to say this, but that doesn't change the fact that we have a nationwide selection of high quality pre-owned vehicles like this one. And hopefully I'm going to be filming quite a few more cars from here going forward. So that said, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up or consider subscribing for plenty more content to come.